Welcome to Barrier Breakers, a podcast celebrating resilience and triumph over adversities. Expect raw, honest conversations filled with practical advice and life lessons. Now on to today's episode. Welcome back to episode 7 of Barrier Breakers.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, friend.
Happy New Year, guys.
Today we are in a studio with a local barrier breaker here in Knoxville, Tennessee. Her name is Nathalie de la Torre. We are so excited to have you on set.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
So, Nathalie, just so you know, none of this is scripted. We don't have premeditated questions. We just truly want to hear your story.
It's off the cuff.
It's very off the cuff. We want to hear your story. So tell us, Nathalie. Tell us about little Nathalie. Tell us about your childhood.
So I grew up in Southern California. I'm from an area, San Bernardino County. If you Google it, it's one of the worst counties in California. They were in Orange is the New Black. I was a little embarrassed.
Really?
Yes. I was like, oh, we're worse than Compton. Anyways, but I grew up in an area called Redlands, and it's the jewel of the Inland Empire. And Kobe Bryant's wife is from there.
Okay.
So kind of give you a little area of where we're at. So we're close to Disneyland, close to Palm Springs, Big Bear. It's a really beautiful area that I grew up in. And historic. Apparently, I think I was the 100th class to graduate from my high school. So it's a little old.
Mm-hmm.
They're also known for citrus. And we were one of the biggest citrus dispersing areas for the United States. But yeah, I grew up there. My parents we're in the real estate market. My mom was the top real estate agent in the nation for RE/MAX when I was growing up. My dad is a broker, and he owns a real estate brokerage and a loan broker. So
does he still own it? They're still
yes.
practicing? Wow,
He's
I didn't know that.
still practicing in California. My mom retired in the crash. So 2009, she owned a construction company at the time. So, California was hit pretty bad, but she's pretty much retired. Mm-hmm. So she dabbles still. And I always grew up saying, I'm never going to, be in real estate. I grew up, and a lot of people don't know this about me, and I usually don't share it, but I grew up with a lot of nannies and in-house cleaners.
Yeah.
So I was influenced by my parents, but I wasn't raised, right? I had people that came in and helped my mom raise us. I'm one of 5. Yeah. So she was busy. She was a top agent in the nation, and that came with a lot of not being there for the kids. And she did a good job. All of our nannies only spoke Spanish, so I am bilingual because of my parents making that choice. And my grandparents only speak Spanish, so that was a huch help, too, for us to learn.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so, I always said I wouldn't be in real estate, and here I am owning a title company. So,
which is awesome.
It is pretty cool. And my parents are very proud.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
That's good. So what brought you out here to Knoxville all the way from California?
So Knoxville, actually... Don't kill me, guys. I didn't even know it existed.
That's okay.
If we're being honest. But so we actually have 2 kids. Mm-hmm. And a big part of the reason why we left Southern California, I never in a million years thought I would leave my hometown. I thought I was just going to die there. Like, it was just what
like most people do. They don't move too far from their hometown.
And if I moved, I'd go to San Diego or I'd go to, like, Orange County. I never thought I'd leave California. And my husband was the forefront to why we moved, and having kids and being able to raise the kids. California just wasn't what it was when I was growing up. Yeah. And what we grew up in, it was so different. We were seeing so many changes. And back in I would say when I had my daughter in 2014, Eric was like, we can't raise the kids here. Mm-hmm. Like, we just can't do it. And he started playing with the idea, and he's like, what if we moved to Texas, or what if we left? And I was just like, sure, because I thought he never was going to do it.
Sure.
Yeah. Like, I thought for sure. So I was like, yeah, whatever. I played along. And then, so 2 years later, he's still talking about it. I'm like, look, you've been talking about this for 2 years. Make it happen or stop talking about it. Mm-hmm. And so 2015 rolls around, and, he had a whole plan. He had, and most of it was to keep me happy so he wouldn't have to hear me complaining after we moved. But there was a checklist that he wanted, religion and politics, and just a huge checklist of how we wanted to raise the kids. And all of our families are from Southern California. So for me, that moved mentally, I just thought it wasn't going to happen.
Sure.
Did you and Eric meet in high school?
We did.
Okay.
I had really high standards. He let me cut the lunch line, and it was love at first sight. It was just game over. And it wasn't just the way he let me cut.
Yeah.
He let me cut the lunch line, and he didn't throw me behind him. He threw me in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that really stood out, especially being 16. I was like, oh my gosh, like, so sweet. He let me cut the lunch line because our lunch lines were long.
I'm sure.
And our campus was such a huge campus. I was a class of 1,000.
Wow.
And so we had a 2-campus, like a college, 2-campus high school. So my 4th period was across the street. So to get to the lunch area, so he was like almost in the front, and I actually didn't know. I knew who he was. He didn't know who I was. My friend was like, let's ask Eric if we can cut. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know him? You know? And then so he like was like, oh, hi. And he knew me as so-and-so's sister or so-and-so's ex-girlfriend. And so he let us cut the lunch line, and, you know, we've been buddies ever since.
That is
Really?
sweet.
It's the little things in life.
Yes,
It's
I
the
know.
little things. Yeah,
He let you eat first.
He let me eat first. And then we started dating. He was a senior. We started dating going into my senior year in high school. So he was already graduated. So then he'd come visit me my senior year and bring me little sack lunches.
Oh.
And he put little notes in there. And like, just, he was very romantic, very cute. He never let me drive anywhere. He'd always pick me up. He always opened the doors. Like, I feel like for in our youth, that wasn't normal.
No.
You know, he was very big on like,
Chivalry.
yes. And my parents didn't allow me to date. And one day he showed up to the house. Mom was like, boyfriend's here. I was working at Macy's. And I was like, that's not my boyfriend. I was like, you know, just tell him to go home because I wasn't supposed to be dating. So I was like, that's not my boyfriend. And she's like, he's not. He's hanging out here. My mom had all her plans out because they were building a new subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was just being nosy, and he like invited himself in and was just hanging out with my parents. And my mom was just like, well, I guess he's not going away. He'll be here for dinner when you get home. So there we go. He just kind of
He fit in with the family.
He did.
right.
He loved it. You know, he has one sibling, and she's 6 years older. So he kind of was like an only child. So my house was fun. My brother's his age. I have a little brother that's 6 years younger than me, and then I have a brother that's 5 years older than me, and he was still at the house. My sister already had moved out. So it was always busy. It was never just quiet. It was always something going on, or we were always doing something, or we were having bonfires, or it was always just busy. So he was always at our house. It was fun. We all grew up together, and
I love that.
there's a lot of challenges that come with that, but I'm proud to say that we're celebrating 18 years in July.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I could say this on camera, right?
Yeah.
I had a boyfriend who, my first fiance, we grew up together too. And unlike you guys, once we became adults and we grew and we evolved, there was a misunderstanding about who Brittany now was.
Yep.
I was, you know, being that's a whole nother story. We won't even get into that. But I appreciate you guys growing together and allowing one another to grow and become your own selves.
It came with a lot of challenges, and we
Yeah.
actually had to grow up very young because I got pregnant at 20,
Okay.
and that came with its own challenges. And, you know, statistically, we shouldn't have made it. It's a 1% chance that you're going to make it. And then the chances of being high school sweethearts and having to grow up, that statistic's so high. So everybody just thought we weren't going to make it. So the whole world was against us. Even our own parents were just like, you know. So, and, you know, it comes with a lot of breakups. Like, you grow up, there's a lot of, like, we're together. No, we're not together. We're not together this weekend, but we're together this week. Like, it happened. And I'm always very honest of, like, I don't have a perfect life. I may portray it on Facebook and social media.
Along with the rest of the world.
I was going to say, yeah. All of
But
us are
I'll be
perfect.
the first one. If
For
you
sure.
get to know me, I'll be like, this is it. This is us. We're raw. We'll bicker in front of people. We don't care. But at the end of the day, I love that man. I could not vision my life without him or my kids. He is my backbone. And if you know my husband, he is the sweetest part of
I was going to say, he is such a great human.
He is.
So
He's
kind.
sweet. He's loving. He balances me out, and I balance him out. But he's strong when he needs to be. And it's funny because people are like, "You're such a strong woman." But at the end of the day, he's so. We just talked about this at dinner.
We did.
That it's okay to, yes, I'm strong to the world, and I'm badass is what we call it, right? But at the end of the day, I come home, and there's nothing more comforting than knowing that I don't have to be that to my husband or in my home.
Yeah.
And he leads, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's okay. I feel comfortable when I'm like, hey, you know, I want to do this. What do you think?
Absolutely.
You know, he's
Our
my
partner.
partner.
Mhm.
I am his rib, and I'm okay with that.
That's good.
Yeah.
I love it. So
And he will support you in all of your endeavors. We talked about this too.
Yep, he does.
How, you know, it's very, it's different now. And I think that women like us are coming more into the forefront where the men are like, we're going to let you shine. We don't have to diminish what you're doing, baby.
Yeah.
We're a partnership. So if you are shining, hey, I'm shining too.
And it
right?
makes you want to make them shine too. Like when they're just like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And this is, you know, it's more, you're more prone to being like, absolutely. Like it's like I said, a partnership. And if you hold them up, they're going to hold you up. And it comes with leadership. He's led that. And so he's led that. So I've done that, right? It's, you do it to each other. You treat each other how you want to be treated.
That's good.
Oh,
And
a word.
That's good.
We need to repeat that one.
And it's true. Like, I'm not perfect. And, you know, sometimes I was just telling you guys, to him, it's so disrespectful when we're really fighting and I laugh. But I can't do anything. Because if I laugh, he already knows he's won because I've lost because I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
So it's just like, haha, I'm cute though, right? So it is what it is. But he knows my cues because we grew up together. And
Sure.
I feel like that's a blessing in itself. I don't have to hide who I am. I am who I am. And he's known me in all my stages, and we're still going to grow up. I read a study that every 5 years, that person's not the same. Every 5 years, you're growing. So that who I am today, I won't be in 5 years.
Sure.
Who he is today, I won't be in 5 years. And if you can live with that mindset and always know that you're remarrying a new person in 5 years, there's so much growth in that.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's good.
So your children get to see a healthy relationship. You guys are modeling that for them.
We are, and we both come from divorced parents. I am not ashamed to say that. I feel like sometimes you say that in Knoxville, and they're like, and I'm like, yeah, it's a little bit normal where I'm from. Not that it should be normal. That's not what I mean. But us being from divorced parents, Eric's parents have been separated since I think he said about 5
Oh, wow. Yeah.
years of age. And mine were in middle school. So I was about 13, 12 when my parents split.
I was 30.
It's hard, you know, and the older you get, the more you're aware, the harder it is because you're so used to them being together.
We were talking about this on the Christmas episode that we did. It's so hard because you grow up with all these traditions, and then all of a sudden it's not the same because people don't feel the same about everybody else anymore, and you don't understand why. Because it's like, can't you just keep it together? Like,
for the kids.
Like, can't you just like pretend? Like,
I know.
You taught us to pretend. You told us to go in our rooms
Yeah,
and play with ourselves.
Yeah.
Play with our things and our toys and use your imagination and go outside. It's like, can't you just pretend like that things aren't different? So
My parents, I was blessed. He came from the side where they never talked. They communicated through the children. My side, we celebrated. When Eric came in and met my dad came into my mother's house, and he was like, "Your dad's in the house," and I was like, "Yeah." Like,
Normal.
we do birthdays together and Christmas together. And my
That's so
parents still
good.
talk, and they still work together, and till this day, they still coexist together because they have us. At the end of the day, they're always going to be in each other's lives.
Sure.
Like when I go home actually this month, in January, I was going to say, here we are. My mom's going to come visit at my grandma's, at my dad's mother's house, so we all can be together because she's in Utah now, and I'm going to California. I'll stay with my dad. So to me, that's a huge blessing that I have that I know a lot of divorced parents or kids don't have, and my parents have always done that for us. So, and my stepdad, my mom's remarried. They get along great, and I respect my stepdad even more because of how he treated my dad.
There was difference there.
Yeah, not only did he put up with me and as a teenager, but he loved my dad too. So I was just like, hey. And as an adult, I respect it more.
Well, for sure. But that just shows the maturity of generation, like some generations people. There's a lot of more maturity in some than there are others, and that's not like a poke at anybody else. It's just the hard truth.
Yeah.
You have to remove yourself from it. And I found that, at the end of the day, if you're making these decisions to be bitter and hateful and mean, you're only hurting the people you truly love, the kids that are involved in the situation. So, I'm happily married too. And I like to believe that, God forbid, if something were to happen, Aaron and I would do whatever we have to do so that MJ's life, he's not hurt by it.
At one point, I see it like this, is you loved them. You chose them.
Yeah.
You chose to procreate and have children with them. it's there somewhere. If you really dig deep enough, it's there enough for the kids.
Sure.
And I always hope the same. And Eric and I have talked about it. If something were to ever happen between us where we split, you know, we could still be friends. It's okay to still co-parent and be friends because we were always friends.
Yes, yeah.
Before anything else. And I always hope, which God forbid it happens, because I'd probably be a hot mess. But
look, there would be some triumphs in that. There would be something to overcome for sure.
Yes, and I'd probably be a little bitter, like he left me. Like, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, I would get over it for my kids because there's nothing more important to me than them.
Yeah.
And I love them. And, you know, I love them so much. And I think that I am the mother I am and I would make the choices I am because of what I've went through in the past.
Sure.
So I want to know more about your children. I know that you have a boy and a girl that are here. I want to hear about your firstborn.
So I do have 3 kids. Like I said, I got pregnant when I was 20. And, you know, it wasn't planned. Our parents were so happy. And, you know, we were in a regular high school, college, toxic relationship. One minute he loved me, and one minute I loved him. Next minute we didn't. And I'm okay saying that. People always want to be like, oh, no, it wasn't perfect.
Like, I'm laughing because I lived that life too. It is not,
It's not. And then, you know, I hormonally broke up with him because I hated him and didn't know I was pregnant. And then I was just like, hey, you know, I was really mean to you yesterday. Guess what? I went to the doctors and I was pregnant, you know, and the conversations were had. Do we want to have the baby? Do we want to have an abortion? What do we want to do? We were so scared to confront our parents. And right away, my dad's like, you guys are dropping out and you're going to come work for me and everything's going to be fine. You're going to get licensed. You're going to be a real estate agent. You're going to be a loan officer and it's going to be great. And my husband was like, I'm going to finish college. And I was just like, oh no, my worst nightmares work for my parents. So, you know, and we still stayed on our paths and we made a decision and it was to keep her. And against what our parents wanted. And, you know, it was a very, very hard decision. And it was a very hard pregnancy because I had envisioned a different life. I was going to school. I was a poli-sci major. I was going to be an attorney. And
I could see that.
All of that changed like this because then it was like fast path to nursing. I needed to find a career now. I needed to do something different because my mother raised me not to rely on a man. At the end of the day, it's okay to be a partner, but like you have to have something for you. So my life changed drastically because my husband, or my boyfriend at the time, was like, I'm going to finish school, you're going to stay home, and you're going to raise the baby, and we'll put you through school once we're ready. So it was like I went back burner, he went forward, and everybody was kind of in agreement, not my family, but his. So, and then his family wasn't very, obviously, again, young, toxic. You guys love each other sometimes. I know you guys are reliant on each other, but you guys shouldn't. It was a whole thing. And it was a very hard pregnancy, and it was them having to accept and now having to love me, you know, and it was a very weird pregnancy for me, and I cried a lot. And, you know, but I loved her at the same time. Like, as a mother, you just love them, and you just don't know. You just do. And, you know, you learn their patterns, and you learn their habits. And as a woman, you're a mother the minute you're pregnant, and I truly believe that. People want to be like, oh, well, you weren't really a mom.
That's good.
Because they weren't here. They didn't take a breath. And I think that's the hardest part I dealt with. So I ended up losing her at 36 weeks gestational. And it's really weird. I went from, it's I don't even know how to explain it, but I was full pregnant, had a cute little belly, and I was very skinny. So I went from 98 pounds to like 155 pounds, which was healthy for me because I was so underweight and I couldn't gain weight for the life of me. It's just genetics, but I expanded properly, and I had a healthy pregnancy. I went to the doctors. Everything was medically correct, and I was young. And, you know, I woke up from a nap, and she was kicking a lot the night before, and I was so exhausted when she finally kind of settled that next day. I took a nap, and usually she wakes me up, you know, being that pregnant, you don't sleep long periods. And I thought, okay, I'll be up in a couple hours. Eric was going to come home And I don't know, we had plans for something, or he was working. I know that he was working, but we had plans for something. And I remember waking up from my nap and I looked at the time and it was 5 o'clock. And I think I slept for like 4 hours straight. And I immediately stood up and I felt weird. My belly wasn't hard, it had deflated and it was soft. And I called my mom, and I remember just like, something's wrong. And I should have known at the time, was like, get ready, get dressed. I'm going to call Eric and we're going to take you to the hospital. Everything's fine. So I called my best friend and I was like, something's wrong. I need you to call Eric. I can't get a hold of him. And so my sister-in-law was pregnant with me at the time. Mm-hmm. And so our daughters are a few months apart. Haley was born in January and Kylie was born in September. Mm-hmm. So she came with me, and my mom and Jenna, my best friend, I had known her since I was in 2nd grade. So long-term relationships are a thing for me. Like, when you are in my
circle,
you're in it till death.
Yeah.
Like, we are here. Yeah. And her and I went through a lot together too, but you know, she lost her dad a year after I lost my daughter. Mm-hmm. So it was a thing, but you know, my mom took me to the hospital and they couldn't find a heartbeat. It was a mother's worst nightmare. And the nurses just kept saying, you're so young, I don't understand. And they're like, let's get an ultrasound. Sometimes the baby's hiding or turned, and you know, and there was no bleeding, there was no signs of anything. And you know, I was sat there and I already knew. And I kept praying and praying, and I was like, God, tell me this isn't happening. Like, and I didn't know. I thought, like, you get told after the first trimester you're safe.
Exactly, yeah.
No one educates you, no one tells you anything. And you know, I was like, I never even knew this existed. Mm-hmm. Like, I was so dumbfounded by what was happening. And I just kept praying and praying for a miracle. And Eric showed up, and Eric was in school for sonography, which was ultrasound. Mm-hmm. At the time. He was going to Loma Linda University, or he had just got accepted, I think, into Loma Linda University. So he comes in, and the ultrasound tech gets there, and at the same time, he comes next to me, and she just goes, I'm sorry. And I was like, no, like, find it. And, you know, there was no heartbeat. And then we did in those processes, you have to still birth the baby.
Sure.
So I was already starting to dilate because my body was already starting to do its thing. And they gave me a pill to soften my cervix, and I didn't have to take any other medication. My body kind of just took over. I had her from start to finish probably 7 hours. So, which is not common either. Usually they said I could have been there a week laboring, which I didn't. God took care of me. And I had my mom there, and I did not see eye to eye with his mother at the time. We had a really strained relationship, but I knew my husband needed his mom. If I needed my mom, I knew he needed my mom or his mom, because I couldn't be there for him. I was a mess. And I decided to have my child naturally. At least I thought. Because I wanted to stick to my birthing plan. I didn't want things to be different. And my mom does a lot of holistic, so I grew up a little bit on what I like to call the hippie side. Yeah, you know, so I was like, my birthing plan, I wanted to stick to it. Well, man, when I was 7.5 centimeters dilated, I was like, give me the drugs. And I was like, give me the drugs now. And the nurses kept saying, you don't have to put yourself through this. Like, she's not here. Don't put yourself through the pain. If she's, you know, let's help you. And so I decided, well, man, I waited too long because they stuck my back, but there was no drugs.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was a whole thing. And I ended up birthing her. I think I only did like 2 or 3 pushes. And, you know, my mom had one leg and Eric had the other. And my poor husband, boyfriend at the time, was just ugly, crying and snot. I'll never forget looking at him and the amount of snot that he like dropped on me. And I just kept waiting for a miracle. Yeah. I kept saying, God, she's going to come out crying. It's going to be fine. And she didn't, you know, and then it goes on to my mom. They cleaned her up and they put her next to us and they handed it because I wanted to hold her because they give you the choice. They ask if you want to hold the baby or if they want you just to take the baby. And my mom was like, don't, just you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, like I want to hold her. And it was hard, but I remember she handed her to me and the baby's eyes were open. She was my, it's funny, you're going to laugh. I was like, this is a white baby. That's not my baby. And I handed her back and my mom was like, Natalie, Eric's light skin. Like it's in, you know, my mom's light skin. And But I was like, I'm brown. Like, she was to be brown, and she had green eyes.
Yeah.
And I was like, this isn't my baby. And I was like, no, you guys are like that. And my mom was like, I watched her come out of you. So she kept trying to give me the baby back. And I was just like, she looked like Snow White. She had dark hair. She had fair skin, and her cheeks were so real rosy.
Yeah.
And so my mom closed her eyes and was just like, this is her. What are you going to name her? And I always knew her name was going to be Kylie. Like, I just always knew. And Eric hated the name. He fought me on it forever. And I was like, her name's Kylie. And so my pastor showed up, and we still dedicated her.
Oh,
and we did a whole thing. And my best friend and her parents were there. And for some reason, I didn't want my dad to know. So I was like, don't call. I didn't want anyone there. I didn't want it to be a whole show. I didn't want to be a scene. It was just his mom, his grandparents showed up, and his aunt and uncle, because they wanted everybody. And I was so just agitated and just beside myself what was happening that I didn't want to close him off to what he needed. So I allowed everybody to hold her. So I got to watch my daughter get passed around, it was very hard. I think about it now, and I probably should have never done that. It should have just been him and I. But the doctors in the hospital allow you to have the baby for as long as you want until you're ready to let go. At least that was the case for me. And that was back in 2009. So, we held her, and the nurses, I don't think it helped psychologically to be told that I was so young and they didn't know why, and that they can do an autopsy. And I needed to know why. I needed to know it wasn't me, because I kept apologizing. I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I did this. I know now it wasn't me. It was a fluke.
Sure.
And then it's not common, especially at the time. But she was beautiful. She was perfect. There's nothing wrong with her. She had all her toes, all her fingers, her nose, everything was perfect. There was no signs of anything in the ultrasound. The autopsy showed absolutely nothing. Oh. She was a completely healthy baby. So then I started testing myself because I needed answers. And I was very stressed out. So the doctor's like, it could have been stress-induced. Stress is a huge killer. So it was a lot of things. And I was like, oh my God, I stressed myself out. And so I blamed myself. And she looks so much like Eric. And that I couldn't look at him. I could not. We went home. I couldn't stand him. I couldn't even look at him. And I blamed him. I blamed me. And it was a really hard, dark time. We started drinking, and I went back to school, and I was trying to live my life like it never happened. So it's really hard. I don't really go into, but I started running again because I was a runner. And when I tell you, I dropped the weight, man, the minute the doctor said, go ahead and start working out, 6 weeks later, I was 105 pounds.
Wow. From 150 something. Yeah.
I was 105 pounds. I wanted to look like I never had a baby. And then I had to go back to work. And everybody at work knew I was pregnant. And I worked at Stater Brothers at the time. So if you are from California, you'll know Stater Hose. Sorry, am I allowed to say that word? But I went back to work, and I was working at a grocery store. And I went back, and it was so hard. People would look at me and be like, oh my God, you're back. How's the baby? And I didn't want to face reality. So I would just be like, she's great. She's home.
Yeah.
And so I had to face that reality of, I quit my job. Because I couldn't deal. Sure. Psychologically, I went through a lot. Eric started drinking a lot. I started drinking a lot. I was even doing drugs and stuff. I just needed to numb what was I was going through. But I also needed to, because I stayed in bed probably 10 weeks. I wouldn't eat. I wouldn't shower. I wasn't sleeping. I was getting insomnia. And
you were depressed.
I was depressed. I would sleep and I would dream. It was horrible. And so I would think she was there with me, and I'd wake up, and she wasn't. So it was really hard. And my mom came into my room, and she was just like, this isn't the daughter I raised. You're not weak. You're going through a lot, because I had to go through the holidays too. That was horrible. Sure. She's like, you're not going to die, not on my watch, and you're wilting away. You're going to go back to work. You're going to go back to school, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts. She's like, you get up and run, and then you don't eat all day, and you go back to the bed in the dark. I kept my room dark. I was like a vampire. It was the ongoing joke. And I just didn't want to deal. My best friend would show up every day, and she would put a Bible verse on my room, and she would hang out. Or my family was staying home and playing board games and just kind of trying to take care of me. And Eric started his medical program 3 weeks after we had her, and I was so angry because he went back to his life, and he just wanted to forget about it. Yeah. And that's how he was grieving. And I couldn't understand how he just kept on. And so when we say it was toxic, it got worse. And I didn't even want to look at him. And at one point, his mom was like, you have to look at him and be a part of my son if you guys are going to survive. And I was like, statistically, we're not going to make it. So I just gave up. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want anything to do with it. But I didn't want to let her go. And we did bury her. We had a funeral, and she's buried in one of the most beautiful cemeteries in our hometown. And, they have a little kids section. So that broke my heart, too, when I had to go do that. Because right after I left the hospital, I had to start planning her funeral. Mm-hmm. And then, it was heartbreaking. And they have a whole kids area. And I was learning that it was common. I think statistically, I was 1 out of 150 at the time. Mm-hmm. It's grown now. I'm 1 in every 4 now, which is crazy to me. And I can go on a tangent another day about that, whatever. But it was heartbreaking to me that they called it Babyland.
I can't. And
at a certain age, your kid to be buried there. So I bought a plot there for her. And we went through so much to get her buried. And people were like, just cremate her. It's cheaper and all this stuff. You can keep the ashes. And sometimes I wish I would have, because I didn't think I would ever leave the area. So that was a huge part for me when we left to move here, is that her body was there. Yeah. And that was a comforting thing for me. People probably think this is morbid, but Eric proposed to me at her gravesite with my son, because we didn't get married till after we had Tristan. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to get married. I was just like, I don't want to get married. I don't want to marry you. I don't want to be stuck. It's just a piece of paper. We can get married in the eyes of God, but I don't want a piece of paper. Yeah. And he wanted to get married, and he thought that he held the ring for probably a month until he felt it was right. And my mom was so mad. She was like, I wasn't there. But we went to lunch one day, and then I would go every month to clean her headstone. And that was 3 years later, because they're about a year and a half, 8 year and 10 months apart. So I would go religiously to clean her headstone. And, I just was keeping her alive in my life, and I was still coping. And when I had my son, a lot of it helped. But when I got pregnant with Tristan, I was not with Eric, because I was so stubborn. Yeah. And I was so scared in that pregnancy that I didn't want anything to do with anything I went through with her. Mm-hmm. So I closed him off. But he was involved, and he was around, and he would show up, and he was like, no, I'm going to be here. I'm here. You're not going to close me off. Like, this is my son, and I'm here. And I hated him for it.
What a good man.
No way. But he was there, and, he wanted to know things. So my best friend would be like, she's hugging the porcelain goddess again tonight, And so my friends, my family kept him involved. My mom would invite him for the Christmas when I was pregnant. I was like, why is he here? I left angrily. I was like, hormones, man. Let me tell you. And I was stubborn. Yeah. I was stubborn. But Tristan saved our lives. I truly believe. That little boy, he's not so little anymore. He's my height, and he's so proud that he's tall. But that little boy was we call them rainbow babies in our community. Yep. And, he was my light at the end of the tunnel. And it's funny because my OB at the time, which I fired because I was hateful and I blamed everybody for what happened, was like, you guys need to get pregnant at my 6 weeks appointment. And I was like, no, I'm too young. I don't want to get pregnant again. And my husband was like, no. We're not having any other kids right now. We got to get our lives together. And he was like, no, psychologically, she needs to get pregnant again. And he was an old school doctor. He was probably like 70 when I had her. And I was just like, no, you're crazy. Like, you shouldn't be incentivizing us to get pregnant. We're not married, and all this stuff, and all the craziness. And I think about it now. I was like, man, I was a mental case after all that happened. But
like, that old dude knew what he was talking about. I needed this baby.
I did, and I needed him. And I remember, and it was a whole different birthing experience. But I was so scared. I actually bought a baby monitor, and I would check his heart rate every day. Anytime he stopped moving, I was right there with the baby monitor. My brother bought me it's called a fetal Doppler.
Yeah, I had one too.
Yep.
And just 'cause that was crazy.
They didn't, at the time, that wasn't common to sell and do things with. And so I told the doctor's office, I need a fetal Doppler. And my friend was the nurse there, and she's like, this is the one we use. This is the one you should get. So we bought one online. And my brother bought it because I was a nutcase. Like, when I was constantly like, out of the hospital, he's not moving, something's happening. So they got me a fetal Doppler so I can be happily at 3 a.m. checking the baby's heartbeat. And I educated myself, and I was high-risk pregnancy at that time, and I was 21. So when I tell you I wish they would educate pregnant women before a tragedy happens, because I couldn't eat certain meats. I couldn't eat certain fish. I couldn't eat raw foods, or you couldn't
sushi,
eat
salami,
sushi, red
processed
meat.
Mm-hmm.
Certain, like, there's so many things that I had a list
certain
of
cheese
you can't do.
Yeah.
Why wasn't guy given that list before? You know, water bottles, plastic water bottles.
Yes.
You know, there's so many different hot dogs. You're not even supposed to touch the chemicals in the hot dog juice, like, as a pregnant woman. So why are we ingesting that stuff? You know, and all these things that I was told. I was seeing the doctor 3 times a week with Tristan, and Eric fought me on that name too. But obviously I won.
You won.
So, but, you know, all these things that I learned with him, and I had a really unhealthy pregnancy with him. You know, I was laboring. I started to go into preterm labor at 25 weeks. I was preterm laboring with him. I ended up having a placenta abruption.
I had a friend that had that.
So 32 weeker. He was in the NICU for 6 weeks. But yeah, it was a lot. We went through a lot, and I'm blessed. I will say I tied my tubes with my daughter. I counted my blessings. I just said, you know, I have 2 healthy kids, and God's blessed me, and I have a amazing husband by my side. And when I say we grew up together, went through so many triumphs and tribulations.
Hell and high water.
Yeah.
We stuck it out, though, and we're stronger for it. And I think that because of everything we overcame, I don't think we'll ever separate. It's just, there's no way.
Yeah. No one can compare to you, and no one will compare to Eric in your eyes because of everything you guys went through together. And you came out the other side better.
History.
And he stuck it out. You know, and I stuck it out, and I don't think anyone can ever know us the way we know us.
Sure.
And, you know, now we're building generational wealth for our kids.
Yes, you are.
Heck yeah.
So we got 2 businesses. I have one opening in March, and, you know, I have my own title company, and the other business is his, and I'm cheerleading him on all the way through, and just business owners, entrepreneurs, and I couldn't be prouder to call that man my husband.
And she will still go up to a school and tell them what's what when it comes to her kids.
Oh, 100%. They are not the brown poster child. We went through that. We talked about that at dinner. But yes, you know, being Hispanic in Knoxville has its challenges too. But I'm proud. I'm proud to say I'm from Southern California, and I'm from San Bernardino County. And I'm proud to be Hispanic, and I'm proud to be bilingual. You know, and I'm proud of all my tragedies and everything that I've been through because I'm blessed. And I'm stronger for it. And I am who I am because of everything I've gone through. So
it's amazing.
Well, now, if you had to put your finger on it, what's the one thing that turned the tide for you? That gave you, you know, hey, I need to get my butt in gear and heal through this tragedy? Because we're always on a healing journey. It doesn't just go away.
I would say Lexi was probably about 3 years old. And I was a stay-at-home mom for a very long time. I did part-time jobs here and there and all sorts of different things. I owned bakeries. I owned a bakery. I did freelance baking for a long time, and I competed. And it's another little thing people don't know about me. I did wedding cakes and competitions, and I did all these things. And it was a way of me creating to cope. But I would say around when Lexi turned 3, I had this moment of, my kids are growing up. And what am I going to do with myself? And why am I still stuck in the same place? And my husband's growing, and he's successful, and he's doing things, and I'm here. What am I showing my kids? There's nothing wrong with being a stay-at-home mom. It's the hardest job in the whole entire world, and you're raising the next generation of America. And I truly believe that. But for me and my personality, I needed more. And I was raised to be hungry. And as a firstborn Jen, it was important for me to have a legacy for my kids. And yes, Eric worked hard, and everything we had at the time was because of him. But what was I bringing to the table? My kids were now in preschool and kindergarten, and I was home, and I had this moment of, I need to heal. I made amends with my mother-in-law. I made the apologies that I needed to do. Even if I wasn't in the wrong, I needed to grow as a human being, as a person. And I needed to develop, and I, at that time, got a full-time job, and I told Eric, you know, we're going to make it work, because daycare is so expensive.
Oh,
and
yes,
so it was just like, you know, what you're doing is pretty much paying someone else to spend time with your kids. And I was just like, no, there's going to be more of this. And, you know, God, I was like, God's got our backs. Doors are going to open. Things are going to happen. And, you know, I would say that was probably around 2017-ish. 2017. I had that moment of.
Both had big years in 2017.
Yeah, I just had a moment of like, I can't stay here. And
you've been there.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's
recently.
Yeah.
And you know, we have
not to laugh at it, but
every 5 years,
recently,
you're gonna have something, and I have grown immensely.
Yeah.
And last year was a year of tribulations and letting people and moving things out of my life that weren't supposed to be in my life. And I had prayed for that. Say, God, take people out of my life and things out of my life that are not meant to be there.
Yep.
Hallelujah.
And man, I'll tell you, it was rough and rocky, and it was a really weird year.
Yeah.
But this year is going to be amazing because I let go of so many different things and I didn't fight it.
Yeah.
I didn't fight it. And that was the thing. You always fight things. And I said, all right, God, show me.
You can't be upset when he shows it to you. You just have to listen and submit to his will.
And that's what happened. And it was a year of growth for all of us. And I learned so much in business and in even being a mother and my kids and learning different things, you know, like my daughter is gluten-free and she's been diagnosed with things. And just, I've grown so much in our health, our religion, our businesses, and just my mindset. And my husband did 75 hard last year, and that was an inspiration to me because it took him 3 tries. And I think he did it for like 100 and something days because he was strict. Like he did it, man, he was ripped. I'll tell you that. He was cut, he was ripped. Like he missed 1 page of reading, start over, and he'd be 30 days in. And I was just I commend him.
Yeah.
You know, and I played around with like, I want to do 75 cupcake. Like, I don't want to do 75 hard, but I'll try.
Yeah.
But he's so disciplined, and there's so much growth in seeing that. There's always one, right? There's always one that's like, hey, and then there's the other one that's like.
My wife and I tried to do Whole 30, and we called it like Whole 21 and a half, and then we went and got tacos.
It's hard. It really is hard.
True story.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, it's like 21 and a half. We're like, I don't want anything from the ground. I want a taco.
Look, tacos
so
are
hard.
they're a thing. They used to be a weekly staple in our household.
I have a
night.
shirt that says, if you're not feeding me tacos, we're not friends.
Yeah, there was a thing going around that says, if you could be skinny for the rest of your life or eat tacos, would you want hard or soft tacos?
Well, I will say this.
Hard.
Tacos are a staple. You got your grains, you got your veggies, and you got your protein. I don't see anything wrong with it. Like,
Nope.
you fry a little bit, just use a better oil.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
They're
all about.
avocado oil tacos. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's clean.
And I fried it at home in a clean oil, Like, maybe if you're frying them at the restaurant's different because they're using the same thing. We don't know what they're using, but, I don't know. I feel like they're not that bad. Maybe a little cellulite. It's fine. They hurt no one.
Okay.
But I don't know. I love some tacos.
Natalie,
tacos.
it's been a pleasure just sitting
Absolutely.
down with you today. And I know our time is winding down. Something you left out of your story that I found out recently was your learning disability.
Yeah.
I would have we just never know.
Yeah, I'm dyslexic.
Yeah.
I actually didn't learn to read until I was in 3rd grade. Again, parents were so busy building their wealth, and they had 5 kids.
Yeah.
And my mom's dyslexic, which I didn't know until, I was. But they did everything right at the time. Once they figured out what was wrong, I had private tutors. I had the creme de la creme until I was where I needed to be to know how I needed to learn to be successful. And because of what I learned, my kids were reading before kindergarten. Like, I was so adamant that they were going to learn and they were going to know every style of learning because of my failures or what I thought my challenges were.
Yeah.
And you know what? They're super bright kids, and I'm hoping that they have good habits when I'm not looking. And
Yeah.
I have dyslexia. And I couldn't tell you what form because now there's hundreds of them. Back in the day, it was just
One size fit all. Yeah. You're labeled. Go over there.
Yeah, and it's a hard time that back then they threw you in the corner and you were just that weird kid. So, and it's hard. Like we talked about that before I got here, those mental issues that you get told by people that are influential in your life, they stick with you. And if it's never changed, it will stay with you in adulthood.
Correct.
And those fears stayed with me for my children.
Yeah.
And it's something I don't talk about because I don't want people to think I'm dumb because I have dyslexia. Or I don't want people to think less of me,
Sure.
you know? So it's,
Hey, it makes you special. It's your superpower.
it is, you know, and I can do things other people probably couldn't do. I'm sure dot counting. Like,
Yeah.
it's a
I don't even know what that is.
It's, man,
I'm
when
sure
your
you
son
can
starts
flip-
math, come to me.
I know. I'm sure you can flip images in your mind to where, for me, I'm like, don't get it, not computing. But I appreciate brilliance in all its forms. We all think differently, and yet sometimes formal education fails us that tend to think a little bit too outside of the box.
Well, and at the time, my parents were told because I spoke Spanish and I spoke English and I learned them at the same time, that's what caused my dyslexia. And that's obviously not true now per studies, but because Spanish is opposite of English and everything is backwards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if you guys talk to me long enough, I probably have done it here, I will flip my whole sentence sometimes, and it's due to my dyslexia. And then I'll repeat myself. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. You know? So, and I do it in Spanish too, because of the challenges of the language. But I learned them at the same time. I learned English at the same time I learned Spanish. My parents never spoke English or Spanish in the home. They always spoke English to us. They had people that spoke Spanish for them.
Yeah.
So it was a challenge, but I'm happy to say I'm proud to be bilingual. And I'm never going to stop speaking Spanish, just because that's one thing I had to overcome, was that mental of I can't speak Spanish because then people are going to know why I'm dyslexic. And that's not even true.
Yeah.
You know? So, or they're going to think I'm dumb because I speak Spanish. And it's just what you're raised or what you've heard. And it's very influential.
Yeah.
We understand that.
For sure.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate this. This is great. And
Yeah,
Yes.
this has been
hopefully you
amazing.
didn't get my ugly
Look,
cry.
I was looking up. I was like, no tears, no
Yep.
tears.
I'm over here just crying anyway.
Yeah, well, Gentry and his wife also had some challenges too, getting some healthy angels on this side of heaven. So
It's challenging, and I guess the best thing I can say to people is you're not alone.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
That's what we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
Is you think that you're alone, and you think that isolation is going to fix everything, and it really doesn't.
And it's a very lonely path.
Very lonely path.
And
But it's those people, having those people in your life that refuse to let you be alone. That's what makes life worth it. That's what makes it grateful. That's what gives you the ability to press through for other people.
I'm sure you're an amazing dad for it, you know, and you love them so much and so hard, and just watching them grow in every stage, it's amazing. And I'm proud to be able to say that I birthed those two little babies of mine. I love them.
they're gorgeous kids.
They are. And, you know, you should feel proud.
Absolutely.
And we're survivors. And I'm always anytime I hear someone's ever lost, or I'm always the first one to be like, I'm always here. I don't care what time. You can call me at 2 a.m. My phone's going to ring. I'm like, what do you need? What's going on? You know, I feel for other parents, because we're not supposed to bury our children.
No.
They're supposed to bury us. And there's nothing worse than having to go through that, or even having as a woman, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this?
Well, it's a hard thing to want to be a helpmate and then feel so helpless. From the father's perspective, is feel so helpless, because you want to do something, you want to be there, but it's like sometimes what they don't need is for you to be there as a reminder, or sometimes what they don't need is it's very tough to navigate.
It is, and I'm grateful that I got over that, because, you know, my husband, I'm glad he kept showing up.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful he kept showing up.
Sure.
Shout out to Eric for showing up.
Yeah, he showed up.
Appreciate you, Eric.
And he's good looking. I like looking at him now, you know,
Now.
especially. But I will say, my kids look like him. And when all three of them came out, they were triplets, and that was the craziest thing. The only thing is the last two didn't have colored eyes, and I think God did that on purpose. And you know, you just showing up as a father, just show up. We may
Good
not
job.
want you sometimes, but just show up after tragedies like that.
Yeah.
Just showing up. That's all I can be grateful for, you know. And he went through his own trials, and I couldn't understand it. And until this day, I still don't think I truly understand his part of it.
Sure.
You know, and we've gone to counseling and stuff together to try to understand ourselves, but at the end of the day, at this point, I don't think we care anymore. It's just we did it.
No, it's us against the world.
Hey, shout out to our spouses.
Shout out to our spouses.
Man, we
show
are
up
blessed.
for us,
they do.
man.
They show up.
And they put up with us.
Yes.
So I love him. He's the best. And he, like I told him today, he's actually painting our new store. I'm opening a cookie place. And he's over there painting. So I'm going to go and get undressed after this. And we're going to be there with the paint rollers. We got the kids working.
We know how that feels.
You guys have nothing to do in the afternoon. Come find us. We're feeding people dinner.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Natalie.
Yeah, thank you so much.
This has been a wonderful time sitting down, getting to know you more, hearing your story.
Well,
we appreciate your vulnerability. It's inspiring.
Well, I appreciate you guys, and I hope to get to know you a little bit better too. And thanks for having me, and I feel blessed that you guys even thought of me. So
absolutely,
thank you.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
Yes.
All right.
And thank you guys for tuning in to episode 7 of Barrier Breakers. We'll be seeing you next week.
Who are we shouting out to?
Oh my gosh! Before we go, we want to shout out. I met our biggest fan.
Okay.
Matt, if you're listening, thank you so much.
Thank you
for just being a day one listener. He was so sad when we took a winter break. So sad. He told me this. And I was like, well, we got people like dedicated to listening to Barrier Breakers.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Shout out to you, Matt. You're the real MVP.
We appreciate you, Matt. We love you. Tell all your friends about our podcast. We cannot wait to celebrate more trailblazers and overcomers like Natalie.
Thank you guys.
We'll see you guys again soon.
Bye. Until next time.
Until next time.